I was talking to a friend recently who was absolutely glowing. She just met someone, and she described the connection as electric, the kind of chemistry that feels like the universe finally corrected a heavy, lifelong mistake. She used that word we've all been taught to crave, soulmate. To her, it wasn't just a date, it was destiny. She felt that rare, giddy, deep-down satisfaction that her search was finally over. We've been sold this narrative for over 2 millennia. It started with Plato's myth of humans being split in half by Zeus, destined to wander the earth in search of their missing mirror image. It evolved into the star-crossed tragedies of Shakespeare and the high-gloss fairy tales of Hollywood. We are conditioned to believe that love isn't a choice, but a discovery. That somewhere out there is a person designed specifically to make us whole. But then the conversation took a sharp clinical turn. As my friend described the spark, she also mentioned the crushing anxiety she felt whenever he didn't text back, and the way her mood swung violently between euphoria and exhaustion. What she saw as a cosmic bond, a psychologist might see as something far more calculated and potentially dangerous. What if that instantaneous click isn't a sign of destiny, but a biological red flag? Current research into the soulmate trap suggests that our most intense romantic intuitions might actually be our nervous systems, recognizing a familiar pattern of trauma rather than a healthy partner. Scientists are now finding that those who believe most strongly in destiny are often the quickest to give up when things get difficult, while the secret to a perfect match has less to do with finding the right person and more to do with a specific type of growth belief. From the math of compatibility algorithms to the trauma bonds that mimic magic, the science of searching for the one is far stranger and less soulful than the movies suggest. If there isn't just one person meant for you, but potentially thousands, why are we so obsessed with the myth of the unique? And is it possible that the most romantic thing you can do is actually to stop looking for your soulmate entirely?
That's, it's such a powerful opening because it takes this thing we all hold so dear, this beautiful idea of a soulmate, and immediately shows you the dark underbelly.
The clinical turn.
The clinical turn. And that's exactly what we're doing in this deep dive. We're putting the entire concept of the soulmate on trial. Not to be cynical, not to destroy romance, but to actually understand the mechanics of why this belief system, this cultural programming fails so many of us so badly.
We're pulling from behavioral economics, from neuroscience, from decades of relationship psychology, and it all seems to point to this really uncomfortable, but I think ultimately liberating truth.
Which is that the way we've been taught to think about love is the very thing sabotaging our ability to find it, or maybe to build it.
That's the core mission today. We want to dismantle this soulmate myth piece by piece, and then replace it with something that actually, works, something that's grounded in reality.
And it really comes down to these two competing ideas, these two mindsets. On one side, you have destiny beliefs, or it wasn't meant to be. It's this very fatalistic, passive view. And the research we're looking at suggests it's probably the single biggest predictor of relationship failure.
Which is so counterintuitive.
It is. And on the other side, you have what the researchers call growth beliefs.
Which is the idea that good relationships aren't found, they're cultivated, they're built. They're manufactured.
Right. And this isn't just, a philosophical difference. This distinction, destiny versus growth, it dictates every single action you take in the dating market. It changes how you evaluate a first date, how you navigate your first fight, even how you interpret the feelings in your own body.
It's the difference between being a passenger in your love life and being the driver.
It's about moving from a passive model of finding to an active, engaged model of building.
So to really get a handle on this trap, we have to look at the environment we're all operating in now, the modern dating landscape. And I want to start with a story that I think perfectly illustrates this destiny belief clashing with the digital age. I was reading this thread recently about a guy, we can call him Leo. He lives in London, high achiever, works in fintech. So he's very analytical, very optimization focused.
Right. He's used to dealing with data, with spreadsheets, with clear inputs and outputs.
Exactly. Yeah. And he navigates the digital dating market with that same ruthless efficiency. He actually described his reality as the infinite scroll.
The infinite scroll. That's a pretty bleak way to describe looking for a human connection.
It's harrowing. And get this, Leo has been on over 50 first dates in the last 2 years.
50?
50. And we're talking about, perfectly compatible women on paper, intelligent, attractive, successful, but he discards them almost instantly if he doesn't feel what he calls a cosmic spark within the first 15 minutes.
He has a stopwatch on destiny.
It basically does. It's this rigid binary checklist. And what the research suggests is that he's a victim of a profound evolutionary mismatch. Our brains, your brain, my brain, they're all wired for a small tribal environment.
Maybe 30, 50, 150 people at most.
Right. And in that environment, you couldn't just swipe left on someone because you didn't like their laugh. You had to find a way to make it work with who was available. Your choices were incredibly limited.
So cooperation and cultivation were baked into the system.
They had to be. But Leo, he's faced with this digital catalog of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of potential partners. And his destiny belief, the idea that the one is out there, forces him into this hellish cycle of hyper-optimization. He thinks because the pool is infinite, the perfect person must exist somewhere in it.
And that very belief is what paralyzes him. It's the paradox of choice.
It absolutely destroys him because the search cost, and we have to think about this in economic terms, the search cost is astronomical. Well, there's the time, obviously, the hours spent swiping, arranging dates. There's the financial cost, 50 expensive London bar tabs add up.
Sure.
But the biggest cost is the emotional burnout. The sheer exhaustion of telling your life story 50 times, of performing enthusiasm, only to go home feeling nothing. Or worse, feeling disappointed again.
The diminishing returns must be brutal.
He's looking for a statistical anomaly, the one that his ancestors never even had to conceive of. And from a behavioral economic standpoint, Leo isn't actually searching for love anymore. He is stuck in a perpetual state of market entry. He's always shopping, but he never ever buys.
He never executes the trade.
Never. It's this high-stakes gamble where the only winner is the house, the algorithm, the app, and it leaves him with nothing but psychological distress and, frankly, a cold bed.
Leo is the perfect archetype for this. He thinks he's being rational. He thinks he's being discerning, holding out for the best.
He thinks he has high standards.
Exactly. But if we dig into the psychology, the work on implicit theories of relationships, specifically this idea of evaluation versus cultivation, we see exactly what's going on. Leo is trapped in an evaluation mindset.
It's a fixed mindset, right?
It's a completely fixed mindset. He believes compatibility is a static, inherent trait. It is either there 100% or it is not. There's no in between.
It's a pass-fail test.
Correct. And because he's a destiny believer, his entire focus on a date is evaluation. He is scanning for flaws. He's not trying to connect. He's trying to disqualify.
So the moment there's a lull in the conversation, or she makes a joke that doesn't land.
For him, that's not just a moment of human awkwardness. It's a diagnostic signal. It's data that tells him this is not the one. And because it's not the one, he feels completely justified in exiting immediately and often without any explanation.
Which brings us to ghosting. I find this part of the research fascinating. You think, people who believe in true love and destiny would be the most romantic, the most empathetic.
You would think they would be kinder.
But the data consistently shows they are statistically more likely to ghost someone.
It's the logic of the moral loophole. It sounds harsh, but think about it from their perspective. If you truly believe there is only one person out there for you, then every other person on the planet is, by definition, an obstacle or a waste of time.
A false positive.
A false positive. So the second you determine that this person is not your soulmate, you don't feel any social or moral obligation to let them down gently. In your mind, the relationship was never real to begin with. It was just a failed hypothesis. It was a data point.
It allows you to treat other human beings like products.
That's the consumer model of relationships. The research is really clear on this. Modern dating apps have trained us to do this. They've commodified people. We swipe through them like they're products on Amazon. We look at their features, their specs.
And if the product arrives with a scratch,
you don't try to fix it. You don't try to buff it out. You just return it. You send it back to the shelf and you look for a newer, shinier model. Leo treats women like scratch toasters.
And he doesn't realize that every single toaster has a scratch somewhere. He's chasing a fantasy of pristine, out-of-the-box perfection.
And that's where the behavioral economics, specifically search theory, becomes so important to understand. In any market, you search for an option until the marginal cost of continuing to search exceeds the marginal benefit of finding a slightly better option.
You search for a new car until the time it takes to visit another dealership isn't worth the $100 you might save.
But for Leo and people like him, the calculation is completely skewed. The costs, as you said, are astronomical. Time, energy, emotional health. But his perception of the benefit is infinite. He thinks finding the one will solve all his problems and bring him eternal happiness.
So no cost seems too high. He'll keep feeding coins into the slot machine forever.
He will. He's chasing a phantom, a statistical ghost. And he's completely ignoring the much more practical and, I would argue, more romantic reality. That the one is not a person you find in a digital catalog. The one is a person you build a life with through shared effort over time.
But before we get to the building, we have to talk about what Leo is actually looking for. That feeling, that cosmic spark. Because this is where the soulmate myth gets even darker. It's not just about bad math and consumerism. It's about biology. And this brings me to the second story, a guy named Elias.
If Leo's story is the psychological trap, Elias's story is the biological one.
Yes. I heard this story about Elias, who was describing his new relationship with a woman, Sarah. And he used all the same words my friend did. Chemistry, fate. He said he knew she was his soulmate.
And what?
The evidence was the intensity of his physical reaction to her. He said that every time she pulled away or went cold or acted inconsistently, his heart would start hammering in his chest. His focus would narrow to a pinpoint entirely on her. He felt this desperate, all-consuming need.
And he called that love.
He called it chemistry. He called it fate. But when you look at it through a clinical biological lens, what Elias was actually experiencing was a classic trauma bond.
It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but the mechanics behind it are pure, dispassionate biology.
It's a biological glitch.
Yeah.
It's a wiring error in the system. His nervous system wasn't signaling love or compatibility. It was mistaking a massive spike of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline for the fire of romance.
His body was in a state of panic, and his brain was mislabeling it as passion.
And if you deconstruct this, you see the really amoral, unsentimental truth of the sexual market. His body was not signaling, this is a high-fitness, stable partner. It wasn't telling him she would be a great mother to your children. His body was simply recognizing a pattern.
A familiar pattern.
A familiar pattern of instability and unpredictability that, in all likelihood, mirrored his own childhood attachment experiences. It's so easy to judge Elias and say, oh, he's just addicted to drama. But we have to look at the hardware. For him, destiny was just a romantic mask for a dysregulated attachment style.
His biological hardware was effectively hijacked.
And it's a really sobering reminder that our gut feeling, that thing we are told to trust above all else, it is frequently just our past trauma screaming at us in a different language.
And it's leading us in the wrong direction.
It's leading us directly away from long-term reproductive fitness and stability and straight toward a high-octane emotional car wreck.
This phenomenon, it has a name in psychology. It's called the misattribution of arousal. And it is probably one of the most powerful and dangerous cognitive errors we make when it comes to love.
Yeah. How does the body get this so wrong? How does it confuse fear with love?
Well, think about the pure physiological symptoms of anxiety or fear. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, adrenaline pumps through your veins, cortisol floods your system.
So your heart races, your palms get sweaty, you get that feeling of butterflies or maybe nausea in your stomach, your focus narrows.
Exactly. Now set that aside and think about the physiological symptoms of intense can't sleep romantic infatuation or sexual attraction.
They're identical.
They are 100% identical. The body produces the exact same physical response. So your body sends this generic high arousal signal up to your brain, and your conscious brain have to play detective. It has to look at the context and decide, what does this feeling mean?
So the body literally can't tell the difference between I am about to be eaten by a tiger and I think I'm in love.
Not at the purely physical level. The brain is what applies the label. So if you're on a date with someone like Sarah, who is unpredictable, who love bombs you 1 minute and then ignores your texts the next, your body is constantly being thrown into a low-grade fight-or-flight response. You're anxious.
But you don't label it anxiety. You label it passion. You think, wow, she really affects me. This chemistry is off the charts. I must be crazy about her.
And the key ingredient that makes this so potent is the inconsistency, the unpredictability.
This is the intermittent reinforcement principle.
It's the engine of the entire addiction. It comes from B.F. Skinner's experiments with rats in a box. It's a slot machine effect.
Yeah.
If a rat presses a lever and gets a food pellet every single time, it's a stable, predictable system. The rat presses the lever when it's hungry, there's no drama. But if the rat presses the lever and it only gets food sometimes, on a random, unpredictable schedule,
it becomes obsessed.
It will press that lever compulsively, frantically, until it collapses from exhaustion. Because the research shows that the biggest dopamine spike in the brain's reward center doesn't come from receiving the reward, it comes from the anticipation of the reward, especially when that reward is uncertain.
So when Sarah finally texts Elias back after 2 days of radio silence, the dopamine hit he gets from the relief is 10 times more powerful than if she had just texted him back immediately like a stable, healthy partner would.
Right. The euphoria he feels is not actually love. It's the temporary cessation of the pain and anxiety that she herself caused.
It's an addiction loop. It's a closed system of misery that he has disguised as a grand romance, as destiny.
And the reason he seeks it out, the reason it feels so right to him, goes back to what you said earlier. It feels familiar.
The familiarity principle.
Yes. Our brains are pattern recognition machines, and they are wired to seek out what is familiar, even if what's familiar is painful. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where a parent was volatile or emotionally unavailable, your subconscious mind forges a powerful equation. Instability, love. Instability, home.
So when you meet someone who is actually stable, someone who is consistent and kind and texts you back in a reasonable amount of time,
It feels wrong. It feels
really boring.
boring. That's the word everyone uses. There's no spark, there's no chemistry, but what you're really saying is there's no anxiety. You mistake the absence of cortisol for the absence of connection.
And so you actively filter out the healthy, secure partners. Your system is calibrated for the chaos, so the calm feels alien.
That is the absolute tragedy of it. We are actively, if unconsciously, rejecting the very people who could make us happy because our bodies are chasing a biological error. We're following our cortisol and calling it our heart.
So we have these two figures. We have Leo, who is paralyzed by the paradox of choice and stuck in this cold, analytical evaluation mindset.
He's all head, no heart, or at least he's misusing his head.
And then we have Elias, who is completely hijacked by his biology, addicted to a trauma bond that he's mistaken for a soulmate connection.
All heart, but it's a broken compass.
And both of them, in their own ways, are completely trapped by this overarching belief in destiny.
So what's the way out? If the head is a trap and the heart is a trap, what's left?
This is where we get to the solution. And it brings us to our third story, the story that illustrates the alternative. This is the shift to the growth belief.
This is where we move from finding to building, from fate to agency.
I want you to try to imagine a guy named Julian. Julian has been married for 12 years, and if you talk to him about his relationship, you'll never hear the words, the one, or meant to be.
He's not telling a fairy tale.
Not. He views his marriage through the clear, pragmatic lens of a growth belief. Julian treats his relationship like a long-term capital investment. He's the CEO of his marriage. When things get difficult, and of course they get difficult over 12 years, his automatic assumption isn't, oh no, I chose the wrong person. His assumption is, okay, we haven't invested enough work into this particular problem this quarter.
It's a diagnostic, not a death sentence.
It's a diagnostic. This is the rational survival strategy for the modern man, for anyone really. He's moved past what some call the blue pill fantasy of effortless destiny. This idea that a perfect woman will just magically appear, slot perfectly into your life, and then remain perfect forever with zero maintenance.
The Disney model of love.
And Julian's success, his stability, it's a function of calculated adaptation. He and his wife have consciously evolved their contract multiple times over the years. They've renegotiated who they are to each other to account for children, for career changes, for aging, for all the messy realities of life.
The relationship is a living document, not a stone tablet.
And my take on Julian's story is that it represents the ultimate red pill of relationship reality. True. Lasting stability in the sexual market isn't something you find. It is something you manufacture. It is built day by day through grit and realistic expectations.
And that might sound less romantic to people who are addicted to the Hollywood narrative.
It sounds like work. But in an era of disposable consumerist relationships, Julian's calculated, sustained effort is the only thing that actually yields a long-term return on investment. The lesson isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right partner through intentional, sustained action.
Julian is the absolute embodiment of the growth belief. And the fundamental difference between him and Leo, or him and Elias, all comes down to one single thing: how he interprets conflict.
This is the pivot point. Conflict.
It's everything. For a destiny believer like Leo, conflict is a terminal diagnosis. It's a sign of fundamental incompatibility. It means this isn't meant to be.
The dream is broken. Time to move on.
For a trauma bonder like Elias, conflict is actually part of the addictive cycle. The fight creates the anxiety, and the making up provides the dopamine hit of relief. The conflict is the drug.
So it's either a deal breaker or it's the point of the whole exercise.
Exactly. But for a growth believer like Julian, conflict is just data. It is a signal from the system that maintenance is required.
It's like a dashboard light coming on in your car, the check engine light.
Analogy, you don't see that light and immediately abandon your car on the side of the highway and go look for a new one.
No, you take it to the mechanic.
Yeah.
Or you open the hood yourself. You figure out what's wrong. You change the oil.
Exactly. The research from C. Raymond Nee and others shows this so clearly. People with growth beliefs, they call them the work it out theorists, are far more resilient when they face relationship stressors. They don't panic, they engage in active coping strategies, they communicate, they compromise, they problem solve.
And this ties directly into the investment model of relationships, which is mentioned in the research. I think we need to be really clear about what investment means here, because it can sound a little cold and calculating.
The investment model is one of the most robust, well-supported theories in all of relationship science. It was developed by a psychologist named Carol Rusbolt, and it's incredibly powerful. It basically says your level of commitment to a relationship is a function of 3 variables.
Okay, what are they?
First is satisfaction forward. How happy does this relationship make you? Second is quality of alternatives.
That's the Leo problem. He perceives his alternatives as infinite and perfect.
But the third variable, and this is the glue that holds everything together, is involvement size.
And what counts as an investment?
It's anything you have put into the relationship that you would lose if the relationship ended. And it can be tangible or intangible.
So tangible things would be like a shared house, a joint bank account, children.
Right. But the intangible investments are often even more powerful. Shared memories, inside jokes, the time you've spent together, the emotional vulnerability, the secrets you've told each other that no one else knows, your intertwined social circles.
Now, some people will hear this and immediately think of the sunk cost fallacy. You know, the idea that you're only staying in a bad situation because you've already invested so much.
That is a critical distinction to make.
How is what Julian is doing different from someone just dragging out a dead relationship because they've been together for 12 years?
Because it depends entirely on the nature of the asset you're investing in. In Elias's case, with Sarah, every bit of effort he puts in is a sunk cost. He is investing in a depreciating asset. He is pouring water into a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. The relationship is fundamentally toxic, and no amount of investment will fix the underlying structural flaw.
But for Julian,
the investment is building equity. He and his wife are investing in each other. He is investing in a responsive, good faith partner. They are co-investors in a shared project.
equity. That's a much better word for it than just cost.
Because the research shows that as you build this equity, you create a psychological barrier to exit. But it's a positive one. It's not, I can't leave because I'll lose the house. It's, I don't want to leave because of what we have built together. You create what the researchers call oneness.
There was a line in one of the reports that just stopped me in my tracks. It said, oneness is made, not found.
That phrase should be on a billboard in Times Square. It completely reverses the entire polarity of the soulmate myth.
It destroys it. It's not about walking down the street and bumping into your missing half, your mirror image.
No, it's about taking two whole, separate, imperfect human beings. And through the friction of daily life, through the compromises, through the shared suffering and the shared joy, you forge a connection. You create a we that did not exist before. You become soulmates. You don't find a soulmate, you earn one.
And that puts all the power back in your hands. It's about agency.
Agency is the antidote to the soulmate trap. The destiny belief is fundamentally passive. You are a passenger waiting for the universe to deliver your perfect partner to your doorstep. If the bus doesn't come, you're just stranded.
Whereas the growth belief is active. You are the one driving the car. If you hit a roadblock, you don't just give up. You look at the map, you find another route.
Yeah.
You take responsibility for getting to the destination.
You take responsibility for the outcome of your own love life.
So this all brings us back to the math, in a way. We talked about the impossibility of Leo finding his one, but there was some interesting work mentioned from a Vanderbilt University economist, also named Greg Leo, ironically.
Yes, the math of the one is actually incredibly reassuring if you can just let go of the fairy tale. The many ones theory, as it's sometimes called, suggests that this idea of one single person on Earth who is meant for you is not only a recipe for anxiety, it's a statistical absurdity.
Right. If there was only one person and they lived in a small village in Mongolia and you live in Ohio and you never meet, you're just doomed by geography. It makes no sense.
It's a terrible model. The math actually suggests that for any reasonably well-adjusted person, there are potentially thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of first-tier matches out there.
People who meet the baseline criteria for a successful, happy, long-term partnership with you.
Exactly. They share your core values, have compatible life goals, and you're attracted to them. The pool of good enough is vast. The pool of perfect is empty.
And this leads to a heuristic I saw mentioned, which I think is just a brilliant practical tool for dating. It's called the 90-10 rule.
The 90-10 rule, it's so simple and so effective. It basically says this: it is infinitely easier, more efficient, and more effective to find someone who is a 90% match for you and then work together to build and negotiate the remaining 10%.
The 10% being, their annoying habits, their communication quirks, the little thing.
It's easier to do that than it is to start with someone who's a 20% match and try to engage in a massive 80-point renovation project on their entire personality.
Which is what people in trauma bonds often try to do. They try to fix the other person.
And it is certainly smarter than holding out for the mythical 100% match, which, again, does not exist.
But the destiny belief, the Leo mindset, tells us to do the opposite. We find that 90% match, and then we discard them because of that 10%. We discard them because they chew too loudly, or they like a band that we think is uncool. We let the perfect become the enemy of the good.
We throw away diamonds because they're a little bit dusty, and instead we chase after shiny pieces of glass because they sparkle under the lights of a bar. Real, deep compatibility often doesn't sparkle. It's not that electric jolt.
It's a slow burn.
It's a slow burn. It often feels boring at first. And why does it feel boring? Because it lacks the cortisol spike of the trauma bond. It feels calm. It feels safe. And to a system that's addicted to drama, calm and safe can feel like death. But calm and safe is the ground upon which you build a life.
So let's bring this down to a really practical level. If you're listening to this right now and you recognize a bit of Leo in yourself, you're on the apps, you're endlessly swiping, you're always judging, always looking for a reason to say no.
Or maybe you recognize yourself in Elias. You're chasing those incredible highs and devastating lows, mistaking emotional chaos for passion.
How do you actually begin to shift your mindset? How do you apply this?
I think the first step is just awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act. If you're on a date, you need to consciously identify when that evaluation mindset kicks in. Are you holding up a mental clipboard and checking boxes?
Stop interviewing them for the position of soulmate.
Just stop and consciously switch to a cultivation mindset. Ask different questions. Instead of, is this person perfect? Ask, can I connect with this human being? Are they kind? Do they seem to have good values? Can we build something here?
It's a completely different frame.
And you have to start the process of recalibrating your biological radar. This is harder. If you feel that electric spark, that intense stomach-dropping, can't-breathe feeling of anxiety, you have to learn to see that not as a green light, but as a bright red flag.
That's your attachment system panicking. It's a warning sign.
Don't lean into it. And evaluate the person's character, not the intensity of the chemistry. Choose consistency over intensity.
And what about for the people who are already in long-term relationships? The potential Julians of the world.
For them, the biggest lesson is to reframe conflict as construction. When you and your partner have an argument, it is not a sign that the house is collapsing. It is a sign that it's time to renovate the kitchen. It's an opportunity to communicate, to understand each other better, and to deepen the investment you have in each other.
There's one final piece of this we have to touch on, and I think it might be the most important, and that's breakups. The research on how these two mindsets handle the end of a relationship was really profound.
This is where the destiny belief becomes not just unhelpful, but actively dangerously destructive.
So,
if you believe there is only one soulmate for you in the entire world and you lose that person, maybe they break up with you, maybe they pass away, what is the narrative your brain creates?
my life is over. I had my one shot at happiness and I blew it, or it was taken from me. There's no one else.
It's a narrative of ultimate cosmic tragedy, and this is what leads to prolonged, complicated grief. It can lead to obsession, to stalking, to the inability to ever move on and trust again. You become a permanent victim of fate.
But with a growth belief.
With a growth belief, a breakup is still incredibly painful. It's devastating. We're not saying it isn't. But it is not existentially fatal.
Because the story is different.
The story is completely different. The narrative is, we built something amazing together, and now it has ended. I am grieving the loss of what we built. But you still have the tools. You still know how to build. You can find another plot of land with another person and you can build a new house. It will be a different house, maybe even a better one in some ways.
It gives you hope. It means your fundamental capacity for love isn't tied to one specific, irreplaceable individual. It's tied to your own willingness to do the work.
And that, to me, is the most empowering and truly romantic idea of all. The knowledge that love is a skill you can learn and a thing you can create. And again,
We started with this seemingly romantic myth of the soulmate. We dismantled the evolutionary mismatch that traps people like Leo in the infinite stroll. We exposed the biological lie of the spark, showing it for what it often is, a trauma bond.
and we landed on this more pragmatic, but I think ultimately more hopeful, reality of the growth belief, that love is a structure you build, not a treasure you find.
The old narrative, the one we're sold in movies, is that love fits itself to you. You do not fit yourself to love.
And that's the narcissism of the destiny belief, isn't it? The idea that the universe will bend to your needs. The reality is that a successful relationship requires fitting yourself to the relationship. It requires compromise. It requires change. It requires growing up.
So I want to leave everyone with a final thought that really stuck with me from all this research. We spend so much of our lives absolutely terrified of settling for the wrong person. And because of that fear, we often end up settling for something far, far worse. A lifetime of searching for a ghost. The data suggests that the perfect match is a mirage. It's a beautiful illusion created by dopamine, by Hollywood screenwriters, and by our own deep-seated avoidance of the hard work that real intimacy requires. Real romance isn't the lightning strike that happens to you. It's the structure you build with someone, brick by boring everyday brick, long after the lightning has faded. And maybe the most radical, the most truly romantic act of love isn't finding your soulmate. It's realizing they don't exist, and then choosing to love the imperfect, real, complex human being in front of you anyway.